What's up, Minneapolis? How we doing? Word. Before I say anything else, can we clap it up for our host and everybody who's touched stage so far? Can we? Yeah. And also a big shout out to the people who run Button Poetry. They believed that I could write a book before I believed that I could. So can we give a huge hand clap for them, please? Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna do some poems, right? Throughout these poems, if you like what you hear, you don't have to be silent. This isn't golf. You can respond, right? You can do a few things, right? If you like what you hear, you can snap your fingers. Let's try it together. We can snap our fingers, right? That's easy. That's a little old school Love Jones, but if you want to do that, that's fine, right? You can respond vocally. You can say, ooh. Let's try it together. Ooh. You can say, what? You can say, let's go. You can also throw in an amen, hallelujah, Jesus, take the wheel, ooh, kill him, turn up, that's my best friend, facts. Any of those are completely fine. Are we ready? If you're ready for the first poem, say, let's go. Let's go. And the article says, the Mexican government confiscates approximately 30,000 illegal firearms per year. When the guns are taken, they get dismantled and the metal is used to make other types of weapons that will later be utilized by their military. In 2012, Pedro Reyes, an artist from Mexico City, convinced his government to donate the guns to him, and he turned them into musical instruments. So somewhere, there's a tambourine, a drum set, a guitar, all made out of things that were used to take people's lives, but now they create a sound that puts life back into people's bodies, which is to say, a weapon will always be a weapon, but we choose how we fight the war. And from this I learned that even the most destructive instruments can still create a melody worth dancing to, and sometimes don't we also call that a battle? I wonder how long it took to convince the first rifle that it can hold a note instead of a bullet, but still fire into a crowd and make everyone move. When I was six, I was taught how to throw a punch. In the 80s, that was the anti-bullying movement. The first time one of my classmates took a yo mama joke a little too far, I remembered my training, so I turned his nose into a fountain, my fist 5 pennies, I closed my eyes, made a wish, I came home with bloody knuckles, and it was the first piece of artwork my family hung on the fridge. I remember staring at my hands the same way you stare at a midterm when all your answers are correct. I didn't know what class this was, but I did know I was passing, and isn't that what masculinity has become? A bunch of dudes afraid of their own feelings, terrified of any emotion other than anger, constantly yelling at the shadows on the wall, but still haven't realized that we're the ones standing in front of the light. We learn how to dodge a jab. We learn how to step in before we swing. We learn the heart is the same size as the fist, but we keep forgetting they don't have the same functions. We keep telling each other to man the fuck up when we don't know what the fuck that even means. We turn our boys into bayonets. We point them in the wrong direction. We pull their triggers, and then we just ignore all the damage they're doing in the distance. The word repurpose, it means to take an object and give it amnesia. It means to make something forget what it's been trained to do so you can use it for a better reason. I am learning that this body is not a shotgun. I am learning that this body is not a pistol. I am learning that a man is not defined by what he can destroy. I am learning that a person who only knows how to fight can only communicate in violence, and that shouldn't be anyone's first language. I'm learning the difference between a garden and a graveyard is only what you choose to put in the ground. You see, once I came across a picture of a strange-looking violin. The caption said that it was made out of a rifle. I thought to myself, if someday that could be me. Thank you. How are we doing? We good? Word. All right. Next poem. Can I do a love poem? Is that all right? All right, here we go. So, quick story, right? So me and my dad, we didn't have a good relationship growing up, so we didn't really talk a whole lot. So what's crazy is that I don't know a whole lot about my father, even though we lived in the same house, right? And about like 6 months ago or so, because we've gotten to a much better place, so like every now and then, like when like I'm at his house, like we're doing like yard work or whatever, and I'm just asking him just all kind of questions because, like I said, I don't know much about him. And it's crazy because we're learning a lot about each other, and I'm learning a lot about myself through the process, right? So a while ago, we were pulling weeds, and my middle name is Kayam, right? And I had asked him, I was like, how did you come up with the name Kayam? So he's pulling weeds, and he's like, I named you after my favorite poet. And then he goes back to pulling weeds. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He was like, yeah, I read a poem by this guy named Omar Khayyam, and I thought the name was cool, so I chose to give you the name. And then he went back to pulling weeds, and I was like, you do realize I do poetry? And he's like, oh yeah, that's crazy, huh? I was like, we're having a moment, like, crazy, right? All right, so love poem. This is a medley, right? All of these are also in the book, so here we go. First part of this poem is called To the Girl Who Works at Starbucks Down the Street from My House on Delmar Heights Road, Swear to God, I'm not a stalker. That's the title. When I asked you for a chai latte, what I meant to say was, I was walking past, I saw you in the window. To be honest, I only came in here because I had to know what your voice sounded like. Instead of saying that, I got really nervous and ordered the first thing on the menu. I don't even know what chai is. Or a latte, for that matter. I imagine that when God made you, I bet he cussed for the first time. I bet he turned to an angel, gave him a high five, and said, God damn, I'm good. Or me damn, I'm good, because he's like God, right? I spent the last 5 days trying to figure out how I'm going to introduce myself to you properly. I finally figured it out. It's going to be something like, hi. That's all I got so far. But I think it's a good start. I'm going to be honest. It's not often that I find myself eager to write about love. In fact, every time I try to write about love, my hands cramp. Just to show me how painful love can be. Sometimes my pencils break just to prove to me that every now and then, love takes a little more work than you planned. I heard that love is blind, so I write all my poems in Braille. And my poems are never actually finished because true love is endless. I've always believed that real love is kind of like a supermodel before she's airbrushed. It's pure and imperfect, just the way that God intended. I'm going to be honest, I'm not much of a love poet. But if I was to wake up tomorrow morning and decide that I was going to write about love, my first poem, it would be about you. About how I love you the same way I learned how to ride a bike. Scared, but reckless, with no training wheels or elbow pads so my scars can tell the story of how I fell for you. I'm going to be honest, I'm not much of a love poet. But if I was, I'd write about how I see your face in every cloudy reflection in every window. You see, I've written a million poems, hoping that somehow, maybe some way you'll jump out of the page and be closer to me. You see, I'm not much of a love poet, but if I was, I'd write about how you have the audacity to be beautiful, even on days when everything around you is ugly. I'd write about your eyelashes and how they are like violin strings that play symphonies every time you blink. If I was a love poet, I'd write about how I melt in front of you like an ice sculpture every time I hear the vibration in your voice, and whenever I see your name on the caller ID, my heart plays hopscotch inside of my chest. It climbs onto my ribs like monkey bars, and I feel like a child all over again. And I know it's gonna sound weird, but sometimes I pray that God somehow turns you back into one of my ribs just so I would never have to spend an entire day without you. And I swear, I'm usually not a love poet, but if I was to wake up tomorrow morning and decide that I was gonna write about love, my first poem, It would be about you. And after all of that, she was like, but how do you feel about me? And I said, put it like this. I want to be your ex-boyfriend's stuntman. I want to do everything he never had the courage to do. Like, trust you. See, last night I had a dream. In this particular dream, I died in my dreams, awoke not knowing I was still asleep, and decided to walk. See, that night, I walked in my sleep. I slept in my walk. I walked backwards until I saw you for the first time, and I could barely muster the courage to introduce myself all over again. You see, I've been trying to find the right words. I've been trying to take the right steps for what seems to me like thousands of years, but something always seems to go wrong between us. We lived in Egypt. I was the Pharaoh's slave. You were his daughter. Loving you led to my death. They claimed I seduced you, and after they stole my life, I was resurrected as a mason. I made the foundation for your house. We met eyes for 2 seconds. You left and I didn't see you again until I died. I came back as a caterpillar. I turned into a butterfly. I landed in the palm of your hands. You brushed me away and the rejection killed me. When I woke, I was a kick drum. You were a snare. We were both owned by this drummer named Cozy Cole, and when he died, so did we, but I came back just to look for you. I left notes in random places, hoping that you would stumble across them. I carved our names in trees and then prayed that it would jog your memory. I whispered your name in the wind, hoping somehow, maybe some way, my voice would reach you, but it didn't, and I died. I died early. I died young with breadcrumbs in my hand, just hoping that you would find me, but you never did, so they buried me. When they buried me, they put these coins over my eyes, and I used them as bus fare to get back to earth just so I could look for you. That's why sometimes when we hold hands, every so often, I hold on a little too tight, and I'm sorry. I just don't want to lose you again. My mother told me, when you find the perfect woman, you got to do whatever it takes to make sure she stays next to you. Thank you. How we doing? We good? All right. So this next poem. So one day I was driving in downtown San Diego, and I saw a man. He was holding a sign, and when I got close enough to see what was on the sign, it said, "God hates gays." Right. So my friend's in the passenger seat. He sees me see the sign, right, and he sees that I'm like noticeably like angry about it, right, and then he turns to me and he's like, "Oh, why are you so mad about that? That doesn't have anything to do with you," right? So I tell him, I say, if we only concern ourselves with the things that directly affect us, we're going to be very surprised at what indirectly affects us later, right? And what I mean by that is that often people of marginalized groups feel like their struggles are completely different, when if we actually take the time to dialogue across margins, we will realize that our struggles are far similar than they are different, right? So I went home, right, and I wrote this poem as a letter to this man holding the sign. So, you ready for the poem? Say, let's go. Let's go! You know, it's funny how we can believe that we are created in God's image and then recreate God in ours. A letter to the man standing on the corner holding a sign that said, "God hates gays." You know, I've never seen exactly who it is that you paperclip your knees, melt your hands together and pray to, but I think I know what he looks like. I bet your God's about 5'10". Bet he weighs 185. He probably stands the way a high school diploma does when it's next to a GED. I bet your God. Bet your God has a mullet. I bet he wears flannel shirts with no sleeves, a fanny pack, and says words like, "Get her done." I bet your God. Bet your God plays a banjo. I bet he watches Fox News, Dog the Bounty Hunter, voted for Donald Trump, and loves Bill O'Reilly. I bet your God's a politician from Arizona. I bet his high school served racism in the cafeteria and offered hate speech as a second language. I bet he has a swastika on the inside of his throat and racial slurs tattooed to his tongue just to make intolerance more comfortable in his mouth. I bet he has a burning cross as a middle finger and Jim Crow underneath his nails. Your God is a Confederate flag's wet dream, conceived on a day when the sky decided to slice her own wrist. I bet your God has a drinking problem. I bet he sees the bottom of a shot glass more often than his own children. I bet he pours whiskey on his dreams until they taste like good ideas. Probably cusses like an electric guitar with Tourette's plugged into an ocean. I bet he yells like a schizophrenic nail gun, damaging all things that care about him enough to get close. I bet there are angels in heaven with black eyes and broken halos who claim they fell down the stairs. I bet your God would have made Eve without a mouth and taught her how to spread her legs like a magazine that she will never be pretty enough to be in. Sooner or later, you'll realize that you are praying to your own shadow, that you are standing in front of mirrors and worshiping your own reflection. Your God stole my God's identity. So next time you bend your knees, next time you bow your head, I want you to tell your God that my God is looking for him. Thank you. So all of those are in the book, but I wanted to read a couple things that are not memorized, but are also in the book. How y'all feeling? Are y'all good? Here we go. Okay. So I was working on a project with a friend of mine. He asked me to write something because we were having a really interesting dialogue about the environment, right? And a lot of things that are happening. And I live in California, San Diego to be exact, and we're going through a drought right now. And it's actually kind of terrifying, right? Because like they're asking us to monitor how much water we're using. They're asking us to water our lawns less, and of course these are things that are totally doable, right? But since we're putting precautions in place, it makes me nervous about how much longer can we live the way that we are living, because the way that we're living isn't sustainable, right? So here we go, poem. In one of my earliest memories, I am 8 years old. I have a fistful of afternoon, and I am asking the summer if it will always be this glorious. I remember taking a deep breath, trying to get as much July into my lungs as humanly possible, thinking maybe I'd be able to convince it that 31 days just isn't enough. In my neighborhood, owning a slip and slide made you a royal family. In my neighborhood, we'd fill up our super soakers and shoot each other for hours, and if you didn't have one, you were just a target. In my neighborhood, we'd run through the sprinklers like someone who wasn't the boss of us said that we couldn't. Back then, the water just seemed endless, like it didn't have limits and corners and edges, like no matter where we were, if we called out for water, it would just come running. When I was a kid, dragons and droughts were two things I read about in books but never thought I'd actually have to deal with. I'm born and raised in California, and here our models and our rivers look like they're both on the same diet. Throughout the years, I've watched both get smaller, and now I can see their ribs when they exhale. In California, our freeways are decorated with signs that ask us to be careful about how we use the water. They hang like an eviction notice from the environment, and I wonder how long it will take the planet to tell us we can't live here and the locks are changed. I wonder how long it'll be before my shower becomes a relic, before my sink tries to change occupations, before the knobs on my faucet become roulette wheels, before my hands rain dance around the spout, hoping a drop will spill from its neck. I wonder if the next generation will know water the same way I did. The way it runs through the fingers, the way it wrinkles the hands, cools the skin, the way it freezes, flakes, and kisses the ground on the cheek. I wonder if my grandkids will ever throw a penny in a fountain and hear it splash. Thank you. How we doing? We still good? What's my time looking like right now? How long have I been up here? 15? I have 15 minutes left, or I've been up here for 15 minutes? Okay, awesome, awesome. How we doing? We still good? Word. All right, so next poem. So I wrote this poem back in 2009, right? Maybe even a little bit earlier than that. And so the poem that I read earlier, the love poem, right, was about a girl that I was dating back when we were dating. And that ended really badly, right? And I was super heartbroken. And I needed a way to kind of process all of those emotions. And I wrote this all in like one sitting after it all happened. So poem, here we go. One, if I could, I would nail these hands to the edges of stars. I would sacrifice this body to the sky, hoping to resurrect as someone spiteful enough to not care this much about you. Two, staple me to a cross, pierce my side with a broken promise, and I will bleed all the reasons why you deserve one more chance. Three, loving you was the last thing I felt really good at. Four, you want to know how I got these scars? Well, I ripped every last piece of you out of my smile. 5, I whispered you stardust. 6, I spoke you into sunflower. 7, I dipped my hands in forever. I touched you infinity, treated you as if you were the last molecule of oxygen inside of a gas chamber. I was good to you. 8, you want to know how I got these scars? I swallowed my pride. Then it clawed its way out of my mouth. 9, I realized that I was never really your boyfriend. I was your hype man. 10, hope your next boyfriend gets smallpox. 10, yes, I said smallpox. 10, I hate you. 10, but I still miss you. 10, and I still love you. 10, and I still love you. 10, and I still love you. 10, it's hard for me to count when I get emotional. 10, I heard that over 90% of human interaction is nonverbal, so 10, if I could, I would tie your arms to a daydream and then auction you off to my fondest memories. To the random dude who started dating my ex-girlfriend 2 days after we broke up. Yes, I saw that shit on Facebook. Now, when I realized that you were in a relationship with the girl that I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, I walked outside. I said to myself, there's no way Ashton Kutcher is going to catch me off guard. I waited 45 minutes, and then I realized there hadn't been a new episode of Punk'd in almost 4 years. I guess I'm the only practical joke in this entire situation. 1, the first time I saw you and her in a picture, I wanted to take my entire arm, shove it inside of the computer, and snatch the happiness right off of your face. 2, if I ever see you in the street, I might punch you in the throat. 3, I apologize in advance. And I know that it makes no sense to have this much anger toward a man that I've never met face to face. By definition of love is being robbed in an alley 8 times in a row and hoping there's something about today that makes all of this different. There is nothing logical about cutting off the most important parts of yourself and then putting them inside of hands that shake, that tremble, that crack like a Haitian sidewalk. 4, there is nothing rational about love. Love stutters when it gets nervous. Love trips over its own shoelaces. Love is clumsy, and my heart refuses to wear a helmet. 5, Cupid is fucking irresponsible. And I'm tired of him using me for target practice. 6, I was told that time heals all wounds, but what exactly do you do on days when it feels like the hands on your clock have arthritis? 7, she always wore her heart on her sleeve, so tell me, why the hell do you look so familiar? 8, I think I've seen you somewhere in her smile. Like I've heard your voice in her laughter. I bet if we dusted her heart for fingerprints, we would only find yours. 9, I have this envelope. It's full of all the butterflies that I felt the first time she smiled in my direction. I think most of them are still alive. I guess these belong to you too. Thank you. How we doing? We still good? All right, so I'm gonna read probably 2 more out of the book, and then that'll be my time. Sound good? Okay. So I'm getting older, right? And things are starting to hurt on my body. So I wrote a poem about it. Here we go. Yesterday, I injured myself, and the explanation didn't make sense. I said, well, I was walking, and that was the end of the story. At this age, my body is a stranger that I keep meeting over and over again. The words I am are slowly transforming into I used to be because every year, past tense finds a larger house inside the neighborhood of my everyday vernacular. I am slowly realizing that when the skeleton is new and the bones are vibrant, they coerce the mind into thinking that the days will pass, but the flesh will not. Youth promises us immortality, but doesn't have the means to uphold its end of the bargain. Thank you. Let me see. Let's read. All right, so this last one. No, actually, I'll read this one, then I'll read something after it. Sound good? Yeah. All right. So, so I've been, kind of like struggling with, I've been struggling with depression, When I tell people, when people ask me like what it's like touring and whatnot, right? It's hard to explain. I'm an introvert once. I don't really like interact with people a whole lot on my own time, right? Most of the interactions I have with people are like during shows because like I just feel tired after I interact with people and I just need to take a nap, But what's really odd about like traveling and performing and doing shows is that it's like I tell people that it's kind of like having somebody like at your house for a few days. And then when they leave and you walk back into your house and you're the only one there, like that's what it feels like every time you're done performing, because you talk to people, right? And then everybody leaves and then you're alone again. And it's this odd feeling of you have to readjust to like being a person, And I know that's hard to grasp, but it's kind of how it feels. So I wrote this poem a little while ago and I want to share it. When people ask how I'm doing, I want to say my depression is an angry deity, a jealous God, a thirsty shadow that wrings my joy like a dish rag and makes juice out of my smile. I want to say getting out of bed has become a magic trick and I'm probably the worst magician I know. I want to say this sadness is the only clean shirt I have left and my washing machine has been broken for months. But I'd rather not ruin someone's day with my tragic honesty. So instead, I treat my face like a pumpkin. I pretend it's Halloween. I carve it into something acceptable. I laugh and say, I'm doing all right. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna read one more, and then that'll be my time for tonight. And afterwards, I'll be signing books. So if you would like to have your book signed, you could just stand in line, and I will sign it. Sound good? Yeah. All right, here we go. Last poem. Are we ready? Yeah. All right. I call it Cookout. Here we go. Somewhere, someone's uncle or father, a man wearing sandals and khaki shorts who says, back in my day far too often, is on the grill. He is watching the food like he's afraid it'll change its mind about becoming a meal and decide to run off. The kids are playing a game they made up themselves and changing the rules every 5 minutes. Their smiles are so big you can fit history inside of them and still have room for right now and the future. The adults hate all the new music, but still want the teenagers to teach them all the dances. The Cupid Shuffle is common ground, and the wobble is a peace treaty signed by both generations. There are no rallies today, no blood on this street, no hashtags here, but there is barbecue, potato salad, and greens. The only tears you will see here is when someone lifts the foil and all the mac and cheese is finished. Now, thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you. And I'll be here signing books, and y'all have a good night.